All right, so the lean startup in ZenDev, how, when, and why to apply it. This is what the lecture is going to be about. I know that everybody here in the company has received a copy of the book, and I think that while it might be straightforward what it means on the one hand side when we're creating our own ventures, it's not necessarily entirely straightforward what it means when we're doing our consulting side of things, right? In this presentation, I'm going to try to clarify that, and if you read the book and feel like some of the things that we're going through are not from the book, it's because it is a combination of other literature as well. So we'll start off with talking about what a startup is. So by the definition of the book itself, a startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So this is how the book itself defines it. Now, having been in the industry for a long enough time, I think that this is a pretty good definition, but it's not necessarily true for all startups or all products. So products and startups are basically different. And one way to talk about how they differ one from another is to talk about the complexity and how much innovation is involved. And then we can talk about what Donald Rumsfeld, the old American president, talked about, the different variants of knowns. So we can talk about the things that we know, the things that we know that we don't know, and then there's the things that we don't know that we don't know. And that's pretty meta because you can't really know what you don't know, but once you find it out, you figure out that, I didn't actually know this. And this is something that can also be put on a scale. And when we talk about startups and products being built, the probability of change and unexpected events happening in the process of development will skyrocket as soon as we have things that we aren't sure how we're going to handle. And that's from both sides. That's both from the business side of things, but it's also from the IT side of things, right? And to take a few examples here, if we talk about the cargo tech app that Kenna was primarily involved in creating, and there were a few other developers on our side as well. When we created this app, Cargo Tech came to us and they told us, so we have these machines that are putting containers onto ships, right? That's their whole business model. So every third container on planet Earth that you see on a ship was put there by Cargo Tech machines. And basically, when they put them on the docks, these machines, they need to do quality assurance of them. And the way that they do that is that they place it on the dock and then they have 30 points on a paper that they go through and they check off each of these boxes. And then they would go back to their office and they had some sort of internal system where they would enter that and keep the record like that. Now, the problem here was that it was a slow process. The information didn't get to the people that it needed to get to in the company in time. And because it was such a tedious process, most of the people ended up not doing it. So only about 20% of the quality assurance papers were actually sent in. And that's where we came in, and they wanted for us to create a mobile application or a tablet application that would allow them to do this much easier. And in the end, we were able to do that, and those percentages went from 20% to 85%. Now, in a project like this, it's not that there are no unknowns in this. So like we had some technical problems. It turned out that there were different stakeholders in the application that they didn't know were supposed to have access. So there was some complexity and some unknowns, but all in all, it was the process of digitizing a system which was already understood because they had the processes in place. We just needed to digitize it. And this kind of application is usually what you call like incremental improvement into any kind of business, right? While on the other hand side here, well, if we move to the right hand side here, this is usually where like new innovation happens and where you have 10x companies built. And if we talk about a project like Mendy, there's quite a few here that are involved in the Mendy project. This would end up somewhere here. It's not on the very edge. The very edge would imply that we don't know anything about technology and we don't know anything about handymen and we don't know anything about sales. But even with that said, when we do know technology and we have the partners that we have in this, there's still quite a lot of unknowns in this. We don't know, for example, or if we take a look at what Halil was doing, he didn't know how to implement, nobody had done it before in the company, like a real-time system for having calls over the phone. That's one technical side. But then also on the business side of things, we have no idea what the customer cost per acquisition is. We have no idea how many times people will use this throughout the course of a year. We don't know what the dominant categories are going to be used for. We don't know what percentage of times we will be able to solve the problem over the phone versus actually sending out a handyman. So a lot of unknowns still lurking here, basically. And the moral of the story is that the more we move towards the side here of unknown unknowns, the importance of the lean startup methodology increases. And basically what the lean startup methodology wants for us to do is to move from unknowns to a place where we have more knowns as fast as we possibly can with as little of resources as we possibly can. Anyway, so the way that we're going to move from here to here is by fast experiments. It's basically try. And what this try actually implies, I'm going to get to that later on. And the management styles on these two different ends are very different. When you're on this side, we're talking about agile methods and lean startup methodology. Once you've actually moved the project to this side, now we're talking about benchmarking, KPIs, OKRs, deadlines, finances, estimates, and reports. You can't put specific deadlines when you don't know anything, basically. You can't be on this side and have good deadlines. You can't make finance estimates when you don't know what the average cost per customer acquisition is, and so on, if that makes sense. So what is then the lean startup methodology? By the definition of the book itself, the lean startup methodology is designed to help organizations navigate extreme uncertainty and to empower their leaders and teams with a founder mindset. And one way to put this down into easier words is to talk about what it is not. So this was a case that we got presented for us when I was still at college. It's Boo.com. None of you have probably heard about it because it was a big failure, but it's a good case study to look at why it failed. So this was a company founded in 1998. One of the founders was Kajsa. She was also the founder of a very famous website in Sweden. It was called Bokus. So you bought books online basically in the mid-90s. And this was supposed to be her new big thing, right? Boo.com, much bigger scale of everything. It was founded in 1998. The idea was to have an online fashion boutique that would be launched in 18 countries at once. And keep in mind that this is a time when not only the technology was not in place, but the infrastructure of actually delivering packages and having connections to all of these suppliers was not in place either. Then they wanted a virtual assistant that helps you through the online store, whatever that means, right? They wanted a responsive 3D visualization of clothing items so that you can like spin them like you can on a lot of shops today. And when they presented this idea, they were able to raise a ton of money just based off of an idea. So they raised 150 million euros. And they built up a huge organization right off the bat. So they employed all the top people from the top companies, had offices all across the world, and everything running in parallel, which essentially mean that they had a 10 million euro per month burn rate. And they basically started building this product, and it just kept getting on, and it kept getting delayed. They didn't have any releases. And finally, after more than a year of development, they were supposed to release this huge launch. There's a piece on this on YouTube. You can look it up. It's by BBC. It's 13 minutes about this entire story. It's a mess. What went wrong? So once they actually rung that bell and started the website, 40% of visitors could not access the site. Mac users could not operate the site at all. The site was very difficult to use and full of errors, often causing computers to freeze. Extremely slow to load without broadband, and this was a period where most places on Earth didn't have broadband. 1 in 4 attempts to make a purchase worked. They had lower conversion rates than they expected. 0.25% of the people that came to the website actually purchased something. Conversion rates, they worked on it. They were able to double them by Christmas, but then also the return rates were much higher than they expected. They had projected that 10% of the people that purchase something will actually make a return. Turns out that it was 30%. And then they quickly tried to fix things and create a low bandwidth version, which was relaunched within months. But they already had a combination of not so great sales and a huge burn rate of 10 million per month, which essentially led to them going into bankruptcy. So this is how to not do it. And if we think in the terms of our chart, Boo.com was up here with a ton of unknowns, but they didn't do anything to move the application in this direction. They were basically working in-house, developing and everything for more than a year without putting anything out, right? And if you think of that as an analogy, it's kind of like sitting into a car and knowing that you have a destination that you need to go to, and you have one tank of gas, which is the resources that you have, and then you take a drive, you use up all of those resources, and then you step out of the car and you ask, are we there yet, right? And it turns out that you're not there yet and you're out of resources. This was where you were supposed to go. The analogy of what the lean startup here would mean is that it would look something like this. You would have smaller trips, but at each point of the milestones, you get some sort of input from the relevant stakeholders if you're on the right way, in the right direction. So, you would drive a little bit and somebody would give you some info about, okay, it's a bit too far north, a bit too far south. You might even get information, you're going in the right direction, continue, right? And the idea is with the same amount of resources to be able to get to that destination of success. And simply put, when we talk about each of these small rides, they are represented by the essence of what the lean startup methodology is. It is a cycle that's called the build, measure, learn cycle, right? And because we say, we need to build, measure, and learn, people think that we should mentally start from that side of things, but it should really be from the other side of things. You should think about what is my value proposition that I'm creating here? What is my hypothesis? And what is it that I need to learn from this iteration of building, right? And once you figure that out, then you need to backtrack and figure out, okay, if this is what I need to learn, am I supposed to measure that I'm going in the right direction? And there are two ways to measure here. There's the qualitative and the quantitative way to measure things. The qualitative is basically speaking to clients. The quantitative is the data-driven, and we'll get to that later on, how you do data-driven development. And once you figure that out, what it is that you need to measure, then you're actually going to try to figure out what it is that you need to build, right? And that is the essence of when you guys hear the term MVP. It gets thrown around so much, and people talk about it should be built in a week, in a month, in a year. It's irrelevant as far as time. It is the minimal thing you need to build to be able to make these learnings. And when you get that information, when you learn something, you're always faced with one of two options. You either persevere in the right direction, or you need to pivot. You find out that whatever we were doing to this point needs to change. So it's always going to be one of these two decisions. Let's look at a few of the cases. Case number one from the book, Dropbox. The hypotheses, very much simplified. People would like to be able to have one folder that has all their important files across all their devices and backed up. Now, when you think about this, there are different ways to test this hypothesis. One way that they could have gone about is to buy 100 servers, build the entire system, and then start doing marketing for this. But that's a lot of risk that was perhaps unnecessary, and they understood that. It was also hard to finance. So what Dropbox did was they created a simple video of how this service would work. So they basically recorded their screen, showed how they could pull one file from wherever it was into a folder, and that it would automatically be available from all of their different devices. It was a 3-minute video, and they created a landing page for the video and then did marketing for that landing page. And on that landing page, you could enter your email if you were interested in a product like this. And they got hundreds of thousands of emails, which they then took to investors and said, look, there's traction for this, but now we need the financing to build it. So this is one version of an MVP without actually building anything. Another fun example from the book, Zappos.com, they took it a bit further. They created a website on e-commerce with the hypothesis that people want a better experience to shop shoes online. We can do it better. Now, what they didn't want to do was to create contracts with all of these distributors, shoe manufacturers, and so on, before they could actually show that what they claimed was actually true. So what Zappos did early on was that they went to the shoe stores and they took pictures of the shoes that were available in the shoe stores, put them up on their website, created a website, did marketing to drive people to the website. And whenever they sold one of those shoes, they would run off to the store, purchase those shoes, and send them off to the client that actually wanted to purchase them. Obviously at zero profit, but they were able to learn what is their conversion rates, how many people are actually coming back to the website, all the things that were crucial in order to be able to raise money. And when we talk about the lean startup, we talk about the 3 different phases. So there's the problem solution fit stage, there is the product market fit stage, and there is the growth stage. When we talk about what Dropbox did here, it was probably along the lines of a problem solution, right? They showed something, this would be great, do you want to be a part of this? They had no idea if they'd actually create a profitable business out of it. Product market fit, Zappos is a bit closer, but not entirely there, right? And then once you've actually had a product market fit, you go to the growth stage. And I'm going to go through a simple example of something I built myself with these 3 stages, primarily because it's such a simple example, right? So one of the websites that I built, it was over 10 years ago now, is called Exempelmeningar. Super simple service. It is a website where you go, you enter a word, and you get 100 example sentences of how to use that word in a sentence. So my hypothesis was that people have a need for a tool that gives them example sentences for any given word. It will be useful for anybody doing writing, right? And how to verify this? I wanted to do it for the Swedish market, obviously. So I simply went to Google and Googled it in the English language to see if anybody had done this for the bigger markets. And I found out that there were, so I kind of confirmed that I'm onto something here. Second cycle. Is there enough traffic to those websites so that it makes sense to create such a website in the Swedish language, because it's a much smaller market, right? And then I used other tools like Alexa.com to give me estimates on those English variants, how much traffic are they drawing, and it turned out that they had traffic in the millions and millions, which implied that if I do this for the Swedish, there's still enough of a market for me to be able to make some sort of substantial income from this. And then in the third round, now I actually have to build something. So my hypothesis, I can build a good enough service with good enough SEO so that I can rank first for any search, like, so you enter the word and Exempelmening means in a sentence in Swedish, as there is no competition for this. This is my hypothesis. And I built it, and it turned out that I was right. And I ranked number 1 for all of these variants, which drove about 5,000 or 6,000 people to the website every day. Now, that's as big of a market as there is for this in Sweden. There are no more people searching for this, right? So then I have to think about how can I grow this to the next stage? And when you grow, in this sense, I could either think vertically or horizontally. Vertically means that I add more features for those people that are already coming to that website. Horizontally would be that I do the same thing, but for other markets in different languages, right? I decided for the latter. I felt it was easier to try to compete in English, in German, and all of these big languages. So I created a new website, foboco.com. But here's the thing, I knew that for me to be able to rank for this, I needed a strong domain. A strong domain in SEO basically means that you have enough links pointing to your website so that you're able to rank above others, because that's the number 1 indicator to Google that this is a quality website. And this is what they call in the lean startup approach, a leap of faith assumption. My assumption was that if I have a strong enough domain, this will work. So I went to flippa.com, I purchased a domain for $12,000. So I took that risk to purchase that and then built the same kind of website on top of that domain. It could have worked out or not. In the end, it did work out. And this website is still up and running. Hadis helped me create the new version of it as well. And it's a website that still drives over 50,000 people every day to it. And at its peak, it was over 100,000, right? So that's those 3 stages in a very simple format. If we talk about more complex applications, if we talk about what's happening at, I don't know, if we go to the extremes at Facebook, at all of these other variants, you're actually running a ton of these experiments in parallel. So for example, you're running one experiment on people in South America that are male. You're running another in Sweden that are over 30 years that have these and these interests, right? And I can only imagine how many of these they have in parallel to learn more about their users and what the next steps are going to be for the product. So to bring it a little bit closer to what is it that ZenDev does? I mean, we've talked about this earlier. We want to specialize in software as a service development and have the ability to take a software as a service idea to a profitable project or company. If we take a case like AvidNote, the hypothesis here by Abdrizak, who is the co-founder of the company, is that because he's a PhD, he said researchers still want a better digital tool to handle all their notes, because his experience as a PhD was that this is what it looked like. Most people still did like Einstein did back in the days, that they print a lot of papers and they do note keeping in those papers, right? So he felt like there was no service that was good enough that was taking people from that analog world into a digital. And we built the first MVP in 2 months. And our MVP there had no admin system, basically. When we needed to make edits for user, we did it in PHP MyAdmin. Again, Hadis was a part of the building of the first one as well. And then Abdrizak went to Reddit to ask for feedback for people that are specifically researchers. And they gave us good feedback. There's a list of this, but not to go into detail. They said it's good, but it's missing this and this and this feature. What we also saw that was that our landing page had a fantastic conversion rate of 22%. So based off of the pitch that was on the website, they thought that this was interesting for them to try out. But it also showed that the retention time, the amount of time that people continue using the app is very poor. So essentially our solution did not meet their needs. So the learning from that first iteration was that there is an interest, but the app is missing some key features. And through a lot of the conversations with them, we figured out what those were. Fast forward probably 4 or 5 more months, a second version of AvidNote comes out. We have the same great conversion rate on the landing page, obviously. And now the retention rate gets up to 30% over the people that have been in the application for 3 months or less. So basically saying 30% of the people that registered are still using the app after 3 months. And you should, maybe this sounds low, but if you have numbers like this is actually really good. So we figured out that the app is now sticky enough, and we wanted to go into the growth stage and start building in features that are going to help us get more users faster, right? the app has 5,000 users as is probably right now, but we wanted to go much faster than that as well. So then we started focusing on features like creating an invitation. And then you get more storage on your own account when you invite people. We started creating sharing features so that you can share documents with other people as well, with the hope that that would take more people to the application. It turned out that our hypotheses were wrong. People did not want to share this kind of document because they felt that it was their individual notes. The invitation turned out not to be a huge hit as well. So we have to be aware that when we go through these cycles, every now and then we're just not going to hit it, but we need to try, and then this is where the pivot comes. We learn something, we need to rethink how we're going to do things. And then to be able to do that, we talked about the metrics before. There are a lot of different metrics that you can learn about. There's the active users. You can talk about the amount of active users you have on a daily, monthly, yearly. And all applications have different expectations of this. If you're Facebook, you might not even be thinking about daily, you might be thinking about hourly. While if you're Airbnb, you might be thinking about yearly because you're only going to book a few times a year some place to stay. There's the recurring revenue. We can talk about annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue. We talked about the burn rate earlier. Then there's the churn rate. How frequently do people come and go from our application? Retention rate is kind of the other side of the coin there. There's CAC, the customer acquisition cost. How much does it on average cost to drive a new user to our system? There's LTV. How much do we on average make for the lifetime of that specific user, right? And the magic equation for most software as a service companies is that the customer acquisition cost needs to be smaller than the lifetime value of a customer, right? That means that overall you're being profitable as a company at that point. And this is a very tricky one. I mean, for a lot of businesses, like for example, if you think of a Tinder, they're trying to get the lifetime customer value of their, it's a dating app for you that don't know, to increase. But the problem is that about 3 months in, people actually meet somebody that they're happy with in their life, and then they remove the application. So they're trying to figure out how to make that customer acquisition cost as low as possible for this to be able to work out. And now, who should know all of this? Now, there's so much information, especially in the last few slides. On the level of a developer, you can't expect this, but you should and can expect this on the level of the product manager or the CEO of a product company. They should have all of this and a lot more knowledge as far as how to do this. But on the side of the developers, and I would say everybody else more or less in ZenDev, this is what you need to know. You need to identify, is there uncertainty in the project that we're creating right now? And if there is, what is the value proposition / hypotheses that we're testing right now? And if it's not clear, you should be able to ask a product manager. And then question what we're building in order to verify the hypotheses. Because, coming from a development background, you have a certain perspective that even a product manager doesn't. You know of third-party services that you can use for some things, but maybe nobody asked you to use it, right? And also, you should always be asking, how are we going to measure these results? Because if you don't see that in your project, then something is missing here, basically. So you should question the people in your whole process. What is it that we're going to measure? And essentially what it comes down to is this cycle. These are some of the slides that I presented last year. We talked about the various ways to do product management, right? And one way to do it, independent of if it's Waterfall or SCRUM, is to have a person in the middle that does all of the communication with all of the different stakeholders that are customers and on the other side of things. And then that person creates a requirement specifications or Scrum sprints for the rest of the team. The problem with this approach is that you create a hard line between the co-creating and the development. So the people that are actually on the team here are what you call like mercenary developers. They don't feel like they're on a mission to actually create this together with the clients. Rather, they feel like there's a clear division. And what we spoke about last year is to move away from this. One better step than this is to, in each of the meetings where we do co-creating, go with one product manager / owner, one designer, one developer. So this is better because more people are involved on our end, but there's still the element that a part of the team is feeling like they're just getting the tasks right. And what we essentially want to end up in is here. And the difference here, which is tough to illustrate visually, is that basically these people that are doing the bigger part of the management and co-creating, every time that it's relevant for one of these people that are on our team to communicate with our stakeholders, they should bring these people into the meeting themselves. So it shouldn't be so that this person is wondering about something and this person says, okay, I'll check it with the client and I'll go back here and then I'll come back here. So 4 takeaways, and there are going to be more takeaways from this project as well, because it's still in the running and there will be a post-mortem. But the first thing is that we never start coding before the initial discovery. And this is something, quite honestly, that's on Nicola. He was trying to push into development before we even had finished our discovery, which means you're going 5 steps in this direction only to figure out that you should have been going in this direction. We need to think and build, measure, learn, all of us. We want a missionary project management styles as opposed to mercenary. A tech council is necessary, especially for inexperienced teams. And yeah, those are some of the things that are very evident for us right now. But as I mentioned, once we actually have that release, we're going to do a post-mortem and see all the things that we can learn from it. But I think it's a fantastic opportunity to learn from that, because we were given the full responsibility to set up things exactly as we wished. We tried something, it didn't quite work out. Great, now we can be better. So yeah, Henry Ford, saying what Henry Ford does. Thank you so much.